In high school, we hear the usual gossip making its round about a duo who are apparently a match made in heaven. The hype behind their presumed relationship is so large that even the classroom simps have to admit defeat. We finally get to see the famed pair and are introduced to the student council president, Inokami, who is walking confidently down the hall and proclaiming her plans to maintain order in the school, while the Beka simp Kazuki walks behind her, excited that he gets to be so close to a girl. But even if he is a simp, he's at least got hoes and a pretty face. But the same can't be said for Usato, who is such an ugly loser that he got the opening spotlight stolen from him in his own anime. He is just your average high school boy with zero friends and zero hoes, so the only thing of interest that happens to him all day is finding a fallen nest of baby birds. He may be an outcast, but he is at least a kind one, so he helps the birds back into their nest and says they can pay him back later if they want to. But then he realizes that he is talking to a bunch of baby birds and leaves before he gets any weirder. He envies all the other impressive high school students and wishes he could be like them as well, or at least get some friends so he doesn't have to talk to birds all the time. Usato decides it's time for him to go home, but his luck keeps on getting worse as when he goes to his locker, he finds that someone has taken his umbrella. He spots another one over by the wall, and for a moment he thinks about just snagging it and leaving its owner stuck here, just like he is. But then again, so far being kind is the only remarkable trait he has, so he decides that he will just wait out the storm instead. As he takes his seat and accepts his fate of being stuck here, he sighs that it would be so much easier for him here if he could just use magic to just blow the rain away, but things don't work out so conveniently for him. And the rain must have taken his comments personally because several hours later, it is still pouring strong and is even raining slightly more as a little FU to Usato. While he is wondering what he is going to do, he hears a voice come around the corner and finds Inokami is still in school. Normally, everyone would have left school hours ago, so she asks what he is still doing here. But this is the first time he has ever been this close to, let alone had a conversation with a girl, so he is stumbling over his words like an idiot. She manages to piece his half sentences together and realizes that he must be stuck here because he doesn't have an umbrella. However, it is almost the school's lockup time, so the gates are going to be shut soon. Usato takes the hint and decides to just run through the rain, even though it definitely means he will get soaked. But Inokami stops him because it wouldn't be right for the student council president to let a student get himself drenched while she has an umbrella in her hand. But just as Usato was about to get the chance to share an umbrella with Inokami, Kazuki shows up and offers Usato his spare umbrella, which he keeps in his bag for occasions just like this. This move successfully cut Usato and dashed any dreams of physical contact with Inokami, but speaking of which, Inokami asks if Kazuki knows Usato since he is being very friendly with him. They are apparently in the same class, but remember, Usato's friend count is a total of 0, so Kazuki must have really put some effort into learning all his classmates' names. This is the first act of kindness that Usato has ever experienced, so even though he didn't get alone time with Inokami, it seems that he has managed to raise his friend count to 1. He is still a bit awkward, but Kazuki tells him there is no need to be so stuffed around each other since they are classmates, and seeing that Kazuki has become friends with him, Inokami gets in on the action, and they are now a trio of students. It looks like luck is finally on Usato's side as he went from holeless and friendless to just holeless. He gets to walk home with the popular kids, something all the other students would kill to be able to do, so he is finally doing something interesting. On the walk home, Usato talks about how he had thought Kazuki would be more of a ladies' man than he is since he is always seen talking with the girls in class, but the hoes just flock to him. There's nothing he can do about being good looking. Usato also thought Inokami would be far more unapproachable than she actually was since she is revered as a goddess by all the students. If she so much as sneezed in class, her snot would be bottled up and sold on eBay for $1,000. So getting to talk to her like this is still jarring to him. Just to get out of the way, Usato asks if they happen to actually be dating like the rumors say, but they deny it and say they are just around each other a lot, so it is natural that those kind of rumors would be spread. With that cleared up, Inokami asks Usato if he has any plans for the future or anything, but he hadn't really thought about it up till now. Kazuki finds it a little weird since she also asked him that question a while ago as well, but she brushes it off as just curiosity since she has no real hopes for her future. Basically, anything she tries ends in success without much effort, so she lacks any real ambition for her future and doesn't feel like she fits in here. She is literally suffering from success. While Usato has never really tasted success, he definitely knows what it feels like to not fit in, so maybe they are not so different. The three continue to walk when Kazuki and Inokami stops in their tracks because they claim to have just heard something that sounded a lot like church bells just now. They can hearing as clear as day, but Usato doesn't hear anything because he's being sidelined by the isekai forces. He gets closer to them to see if they are alright, and thus it gets pulled into the isekai portal, even though he was never actually meant to be there. The magic circle beneath their feet is about to teleport them, and they have a wide range of reactions from Kazuki's confusion to Inokami's utter excitement, and Usato, who gets cut off in the middle of what he was saying. Usato later opens his eyes to find himself in a palace before a king. After the initial shock of the situation, he asks Kazuki what is going on and why they are in such a strange place. But while their brains are still processing, Inokami is practically drooling from excitement as she realizes this is a fantasy and she's loving it. The king notices that they have all finally awoken, so he starts talking but gets cut off by Kazuki, who rightfully wants to know what is going on here. A guard tells Kazuki that he is being impertinent towards the king, but the king is fine with it since he did just basically kidnap a bunch of kids. He apologizes to them but asks that they at least hear him out before they make their judgments on what to do from here. He introduces himself as King Lloyd of the Linger Kingdom, and Inokami is only getting more excited as he talks. He goes on to explain that they were summoned to his kingdom as heroes, and Inokami has a minigasm on the floor from the sheer excitement. The king of demons had laid siege to his kingdom, and with a combined effort, they were successfully able to repel him for now. But since the demon lord is surely strengthening his army right now, they probably won't be so lucky next time. Thus, they decided it might be necessary to take drastic measures and turn to the forbidden spells of ages past that allowed them to summon heroes into this world with the potential to oppose the demon lord. That is a very plausible story, but Kazuki is missing the part where that became his problem. He was just living his life a moment ago, but now he's being asked to fight some demon lord and he's supposed to just be okay with it. He had a good life and a family that he loves, so he wants to be sent back to his world. But the king apologizes again and tells him that the summoning spell only works in one direction, so it isn't possible to send them back right now. This isn't good enough for Kazuki, who gets even angrier. But then he gets reminded that he is surrounded by armed guards who serve the king, so picking a fight here won't get him anywhere. The king gets down from his throne and walks up to three before kneeling before them. He swears that he will find a way to send them back to their original world in the near future. But in the meantime, he asks that they lend him their power to help save his kingdom and its people. Inokami calms her excited for a bit and asks the king why he keeps referring to them as heroes, even though he has no information on them, so he has his assistant, Wellesley, explain. The hero summoning magic circle contains a spell that seeks out individuals who could be potential heroes, which is why they would hear a bell sound before they are summoned. But that just means that while Inokami and Kazuki were the intended target, Usato just got dragged along for the ride and isn't a potential hero. We cut to the magic aptitude evaluation that they will be taking, and Wellesley instructs them to place their hand on this magic orb to determine their attribute and its strength. While Inokami is taking her turn, Kazuki asks Usato if he really isn't angry about the way things turned out for him. Not only was he summoned here against his will, it happened by accident too. But luckily for him, the king actually accepts responsibility for his actions, and despite the likelihood that Usato might just be a regular dude, he is still being treated well. Besides, Wellesley told him that there is still a chance that he might be able to use magic after all, so he might as well try. Usato is taking this a lot better than Kazuki was expecting, and then there is Inokami, who is still itching to get her grubby little fingers all over that ball. Once the preparations are complete, Inokami places her hand on the crystal ball, and it begins to glow with a brilliant yellow. This is indicative of the thunder element and also reveals that she has a huge mana reserve. Next up is Kazuki, and once he touches it, it begins to glow pure white, and this is one of the more rare abilities because only a few people can wield it. Light magic is the natural weakness against demons, so it will be a powerful asset in a war against them. Last up is Usato, but he doesn't have all that much hope that he'll be powerful. He just wants an ability that will allow him to be useful to his friends. He touches the orb and it begins to glow with a beautiful emerald green color, so he asks Wellesley what it means, but she's freaking the hell out and grabs him to go inform the king of what has just happened. She bursts into the throne room to meet the king and he asks what happened. She says Kazuki and Inokami both have great magical aptitude, but the real issue is with Usato's magic. The king doesn't understand what the big deal is and jokes that it wouldn't even be that bad if Usato's magic was the dark element. But Wellesley mentions that his aptitude test showed green, and the king's face immediately goes to "oh shit, this is bad." With how they are reacting, Usato wonders if he might be radioactive or something, but it is something much worse than that. The king starts making plans to relocate Usato somewhere else for his own safety. Usato asks if his ability is really that rare, but there is actually someone else who has it, and that is the problem because she is major bad news. And as if on cue, the woman they were talking about bursts into the throne room. Everyone who knows her has a look of fear on their face, but Rose is just being diligent in her service to the king. She was supposed to be on vacation right now, and she decided to come in and check on the status of the summoning ritual. She spots Usato there and asks if he is one of the heroes, but the king, trying to draw her attention elsewhere, says he is just a random kid who got caught up in the summoning ritual by accident. Rose believes him and introduces herself to Usato as the captain of the kingdom's rescue squad. Wellesley then redirects her attention to the crystal ballroom where Inukami and Kazuki are waiting, so Rose begins to leave, much to the relief of the king. He tells Usato that they will figure out what to do with him later, but for now, they will provide him with suitable accommodation. However, Usato still has many questions he would like to be answered since he never learned what kind of magic green is meant to signify. Unfortunately, this was said within earshot of Rose, and upon realizing that his magic is green, she immediately makes a move to kidnap the boy. The king initiates a code red and asks Wellesley to get Usato out of here for his own good, so she forms a magic bubble and has him racing out of the castle at high speed. But Rose is always up for a manhunt and chases after him at amazing speeds. She catches up to the bubble and with a single punch, bursts it along with the entirety of Usato's intestinal tract. From the courtyard, she tells the king that she will be taking Usato, but he doesn't need to worry because she will turn him into a proper healer with her training. The king can do nothing but watch as Usato gets abducted, and the news is later broken to Inukami and Kazuki. They ask if he is in any danger, but it's not like there is a threat of him dying, but there will definitely be psychological damage inflicted. Green signifies healing magic, which is extremely rare for one to possess, so Rose, as a healing magic user herself, took Usato to train him on how to use it. The only problem is that her training methods are a little, well, they violate OSHA regulations, health and safety requirements, and break a few restrictions of the Geneva Convention. Usato learns from Rose that his ability is that of a healer, so she plans to train him to become one, which is why she brought him here. She calls on the boys to meet Usato, and in an instant, he is surrounded by 5 big burly guys and pinned against a wall. All that's missing now is a camera and a white couch. Rose roundhouse kicks one of them and says they shouldn't scare Usato, so she carries on with her explanation. These guys are part of the rescue squad, but they aren't actually healers. There are 2 other healers in the rescue squad, but they are stationed elsewhere right now, so Rose is going to take on his training personally. And to put it lightly, Usato is screwed big time. Set in a village on the side of a mountain, the story kicks off during the winter season when the flu is at an all-time high. As such, we meet the main character in a clink where he is getting his shot. After being done, the lad takes the bus to his work. At the top of the mountain, he works in a chemistry lab. As soon as he enters, Mr. Nobuo makes clear he is not gonna be one of those cool-ass characters. He is single and not ready to mingle. The guy is currently too sick. Consequently, Ashima gets annoyed by his constant sneezing, so he tries to convince the main man to take some of the experimental flu medicine they recently developed. It's seeing how much med he took. Nobuo is now beyond the idea that anything would help. Still, the lads did suggest one new medicine currently laying on the chief's office desk, one they still haven't had the opportunity to examine. Thereafter, when Nobuo goes to the chief's office to get some paperwork signed, he doesn't find him there. The only thing he finds is the blue bottle on the boss's desk, so he takes one of those samples and swallows it as if it was no biggie. For a line of work like his, you would think the guy has brains, but nope. He took a pill thinking just one won't harm. That said, I can't hate on the man too much. Low-key, it's kinda like when I say, one more burrito won't hurt. Ah, I should've known better. And sure enough, just like when you take in that fine piece of Mexican cuisine, Nobuo's female co-workers smelled something fishy in the air. Truly, it was a bad mistake, worthy of the boss to lose his shit and borderline violate Aoshima, the four-eyed idiot who suggested to Nobuo that taking the experimental drugs would be a great idea. The chief was losing his shit because the supposed flu bills were in fact not flu bills as the fellas thought, but something quite dangerous. Too dangerous for the boss to rush out of the door hoping he can find MC at the receptionist's desk. After the boss exited, the chemists smelled something nice in the air, which happens to be the same thing the girls were smelling earlier. Soon after, we learned that the MC was in fact still in the building. He fell asleep in an empty room. When he went out to check if anyone was still in the building, Nobuo found the receptionist dead. Panicked, Nobuo called for help, only to find out that just like her, his colleagues were down on the ground. After calling for an ambulance, the main man headed to the chief's office where he found the boss also dead at the computer. Luckily, since this wasn't the first body he saw, Nobuo stayed calm, cool, and collected. Well, not too much, but enough to notice that his boss had turned off the emergency alarm, so the lad was like, the heck with that. And as soon as he turned it back on, all the alarms went off the roof, indicating that a biohazard outbreak has taken place. Also, turning back the computer connected the offices with higher-ups who were on the other end losing their shits. After the MC introduces himself and the guy says, "I don't care, put your boss on," the overseer learns about the lab's chief status, as well as the death toll in the lab. He later freaks out once he learns that Nobuo called for an ambulance. However, Nirasaki, aka the Overseer, calmed the fuck down shortly after once he received the MC's file, and then instructed him to bring the blue medicine bottle with its paperwork to the main firm so he can hand it to him and only him. Turns out, the development of this medicine was issued in a top-secret manner straight from the government head. Therefore, he has to get out of the lab with the bottle and the paperwork before the cops arrive, and if someone asks, he doesn't work for the pharmaceutical firm. After gathering all the stuff, Nobuo cycled his bike at top speed. As you saw, birds suddenly fell from the sky and knocked our boy out of course. And if you thought that was strange, just you wait, as shit is about to go sideways. When the camera panned up, we found out that everything was blooming in the middle of winter, unlike the dead paramedic who was snuffed out way too soon, just like the dozens of people in their cars, much to Nobuo's horror. Outside the city, higher-ups meet and discuss the situation and how to fix it. In the meantime, they just cut off all roads leading to the town with no explanation for the public. From the sky, journalists report back how the situation on the ground is like, while being amazed by the sight of flowers blooming in winter as if it's mid-spring, contrasted by the unsettling massive numbers of dead people. It was a sight to behold. Among the carnage, they discover that there's one survivor still on the ground, and it's none other than yours truly. Therefore, the reports dropped down to rescue him, but when they got close, the staff immediately felt as if something was suffocating them, and it sure wasn't the sheer coolness of the main character, as it was nowhere to be found when Nobuo started begging for help. Back in the Ministry of Defense office, top officials are gathered to discuss the situation of the chemical weapon outbreak. Naturally, foreign officials weren't that happy once they learned about this secret project the Japanese government was cooking. Likewise, the Japanese officials weren't happy once they learned that the center of contamination was somehow moving. One guy theorized the wind is carrying the deadly smell. Unbeknown to them, this destructive force was being carried by one man on a mission to deliver paperwork, no matter what. The two chiefs from the lab talk about the MC being the only survivor and their hope in retrieving the pill samples. However, their only beacon of hope turns to a beacon of distress once the manager says, "So the gas is coming towards us then." Finally, a man with a head over his shoulders. Back on the ground, the soldiers holding the line sense the smell is getting stronger. It seems neither masks nor hazmat suits aren't enough to keep the smoke out. As they were starting to retreat, they saw Nobuo nonchalantly strolling down the road with a sandwich in hand. Keep in mind, although they can see the gas from afar, they still don't know the source, and as such they think this lucky bastard managed to be just in the right zone to be safe. Therefore, when they go to bring him to their side thinking he is just another citizen that was stuck in traffic, the soldiers fall to their knees. The air tenses, no pun intended. Another character with brains recognizes that the smell is coming from Nobuo, and he orders his men to clear the area. Those who were unfortunate and took in the musk of the main man died. Back on the peaceful side of the mountain, Grandma and Grandpa Nobuo learn of his situation. Meanwhile, in the office, the officials are now certain that the source of the gas is Nobuo himself. Further research suggests that the release of gas and its amount correlates with Nobuo's metabolism. In other words, the more stressed he gets and worked up he becomes, the deadlier the gas gets. Therefore, the official's top prio would be calming him down. Now you might ask, instead of all this hassle, why they don't kill that fucker and get it over with? A thing an official suggested, but the US official declined since they have invested a lot in this research, and killing a live prime sample like Nobuo would be a waste of people's tax money. USA, USA, USA. However, the Japanese defense minister wasn't on board after hearing this complete regard for his people, and he was like, "The fuck with your tax money? We can worry about it later. The safety of our citizens is what matters now." As such, the defense forces land, air, and sea were ordered to be dispatched to the Nobuo location. On board a helicopter, Nobuo's grandmother was told to say some shit to convince the main man to head back to the town, but once it all seemed to settle down, a guy took a shot at yours truly and missed. The grandma started yelling at the guy for trying to kill her sweet grandson, and as a result, Nobuo's stress levels started to rise, which in turn forced the helicopters to fly away. Nobuo tried to chase after them on his motorcycle to see where they're taking his granny, but instead, he was met with missiles. On the other side of a tunnel he entered were all the forces waiting for him to blast his ass on sight. Yup, the old-timer has sent everything he has to stop our boy in his tracks. However, Nobuo is a man of commitment, focus, and sheer fucking will. He is the John Wick of this movie, and as such he has the power of plot armor to protect him from the first couple of shots, as well as the power of gas to help him completely evade the tank's attacks after it blocked the view and somehow mess with the machine's sensory systems. Thus, all forces started bombing the area left and right, destroying bridges, houses, and roads, but not Nobuo's bike. The lad continued making steady progress to Tokyo. Meanwhile, citizens try to evacuate from the nearby sites and rush to the airport. Yet, just like the Defense Forces machines, the airport is out of order. On the other end, the old-timer got a call from the Prime Minister telling him he would bring the United Nations peacekeeping forces in, which would likely result in Tokyo becoming a war ground. Seeing shit has hit the fan in massive portions, there was no need for the lab managers to be in the office anymore, so the old-timers calmly excuse them to leave and attend to their families. However, once he sees the US officer making some moves, he loses his mind and demands to know what they are planning. Turns out the US was waiting for the Prime Minister to ask for help from the UN, which would be the green light they needed to start acting. Yes, the officer requested the deployment of men rocking the next-gen space suit, and even though they are still in the prototype stage, the guy claims the suits are 100% shielding from electromagnetic radiation, and its armor is damn near understandable. In other words, he called on the Space Marine from Warhammer to capture Nobuo, unlike the old-timer who still plans to put an end to our boy's progress in life before the US gets to him. Speaking about the main man, his bike breaks down and he is still hungry. No amount of food he eats is enough, so he goes back into the tunnel to check if any car has food in it. While inside, the defense forces act up to their name and defend his bike as well as the tunnel Nobuo is in by blowing them off the map. Believing they finally managed to put down the gas god, the officer orders ice-cold gas to be pumped into the tunnel so they can freeze Nobuo's body. Soon after, the US Navy helicopter arrives. Although the officer was all heated up for some confirmation, he wasn't planning to cross men rocking doom suits. A wise choice it was, as these cold killers just walked into the gas-infested tunnel with zero sign of concern, while the officer was acting like a Karen. Now inside the freezing tunnel, Nobuo is confidently inching his way through one step at a time. Yet with poor vision, men on his back trying to kill him, and scary figures approaching him while breathing like Darth Vader, stress levels were at an all-time high, especially when they pointed something at him, resulting in a massive electromagnetic explosion followed by a huge gas expulsion that destroyed everything nearby. 30 minutes later, the office gets a reading of gas levels decreasing. The footage from the choppers showed the spaceman waving around what seemed like a coffin, a sign of success. The old-timer finally managed to take a breath of relief, just like the rest of the people present. The walking nightmare has finally ended, or so they believed. Soon after ending a call with the Prime Minister, a Space Marine entered the office with Nobuo's case in hand to deliver it. After the manager thanked him, the Marine bowed and revealed himself to be none other than Nobuo, who was alive and well. Although I thought, oh man, they must have told him about the situation, hence why he didn't have any hard feelings over his people trying to kill him, my perspective soon changed once I realized he still doesn't know jack shit. He just handed them the case and proceeded to click the open button, much to everyone's horror. The room was engulfed with gas, and the screen went black, ending the movie with Nobuo noting,